In this chapter, we're going to look at learning and behavioral analysis. And anytime we look at psychology, we have to say, well, what's causing the behavior? Well, there's a lot of things that cause behavior. So in this particular chapter, we're going to talk about learning. So we're a product of two things. We have our genetics plus our environment equals who we are. So genetics plus environment equals who we are. Well, learning comes on the environmental side. So we've kind of talked about this before in some of the other psychology classes that we have. We would like to think that, we know genetics is important, but we would like to think that learning in the environment is even more important because that's what we can change. So a lot of classic psychology experiments where twins are separated at birth, they have the exact same genetics, but yet their environments are different or their learning is different. So we're going to look at, in terms of environmental effects, we're going to look at learning. Fascinating studies on learning, in America, we put a lot of emphasis on learning. As a matter of fact, in America, that's how we base. If someone is an educated person, then they've had a lot of learning experiences. And whether you, I have this discussion even with my own kids, and even with my son who loves to work. It's kind of like it should be based sometimes on how hard a person works, but in our society we base a lot of things on how much education they have. So whether you like the system or you don't, that's just a lot of it. So what is learning? Well, learning is defined in our book, in our psychology book. Learning is defined as a process based on experience that results in a change in behavior or behavior potential. Okay? Let me give you that again. So learning is defined as a process based on experiences that result in a change in behavior or behavior potential. So it says that, once again, it's based on the experience of what we learn, the ability to have a significant change on our behavior or our behavior potential, the potential that we have to behave. So for example, there's three different types of learning that take place. So you need to know that definition for learning. Once again, it's a process based on experience that results in a change in behavior or behavior potential. So there's three parts to learning and three parts to behavior. Okay? So the three parts of learning that we have, number one is performance. Let me give you the three and then we'll talk about them. Performance is one, appreciation is the second, and understanding is the third. So when we learn how to throw a ball better, then we can perform better, or we learn how to do a skill, we can do that skill better. When we learn about something, we have a greater appreciation for it. And when we learn how something works, then we have an understanding for that. We have an understanding of that thing, that person, that whatever it is we're trying to understand. So learning has three different areas that is affected in the behavior. So it's performance, appreciation, and understanding. So let's go back and let's look at how this kind of evolved through the years. The early psychology of learning. There was a guy named John Watson, and today there's hundreds and hundreds of different writers and experimental and scientists, different people. But back then we didn't have as many people. Psychology is a relatively new field. And so John Watson lived from 1878 to 1958. And in the later years, in the 1950s, John Watson founded what's called behaviorism. And what behaviorism is saying that let's look at somebody's behaviors and let's try to determine where those behaviors came from. Well, that was that seems like a simple deal now. And we've studied so much psychology, and you guys have talked about, what kind of psychologist you are and all these different things. and we look at the development of children, we look at the development of adults, and we see that the process of learning, okay, results in behavior. So in the 1950s, John Watson founded behaviorism. And in this case, the behaviors reflected learning. So we say, well, whatever behavior we had reflect whatever learning we had, or whatever exposure we had to something. Okay? So learning, once again, let's go back to the original definition. Learning is a process based on experience. So it's a process based on experience that results in a change in behavior or behavior potential. So learning could be textbooks, learning could be school learning, or learning could be also experiencing and taking in stimuli from our environment. So we learn whenever something happens. When we're a little kid and we touch something that's hot, we get burnt, that hurts, we pull our hand back, and our learning experience is we don't want to touch something hot. Okay? In this class, we come to a college class and we begin seeing how somebody learns, how the brain works. So even though we might not see that, we're able to learn that and have an understanding of what could change our behavior or our behavior potential. So after taking this class, there might be things that you learn that cause you to see things differently. Remember, there's 3 different areas of learning. We had that performance, appreciation, and understanding. So hopefully, through the learning in this class, your performance will be better in that when we ask you questions on this test, you'll know more about psychology, your performance. Your appreciation of psychology will grow in that you will know more about psychology, not just understanding, but you'll have appreciation. Oh, I didn't know it was that vast. You know, when we have an appreciation for learning based on what we're learning right now, then we're going to be like, oh, I didn't realize learning affected my behavior so much. So that's what John Watson was doing in the 1950s, and he founded behaviorism. He says, let's look at those behaviors, and they're a result of learning. So once again, John Watson, our behaviors reflect our learning. Now, that was in the 1950s. Then we had another researcher come along after John Watson that studied John Watson quite a bit, and this was B.F. Skinner, a major contributor to psychology, and so Watson studied and founded behavioralism. When Skinner got a hold of it, they called Skinner's behavioralism radical behavioralism. Okay. Now, here's what Skinner began to study, and I'll tell you some of the studies that he did. He said that mental events such as thinking and imaging do not cause behavior. Rather, there are examples of behavior that are caused by the environmental stimuli. Now, let me say that again. That sounds tricky, and I took that right out of your book, and we're going to simplify that a little bit. But B.F. Skinner, known as radical behavioralism, he said that the mental events such as thinking and imaging do not cause the behavior. He says that the examples of behavior are caused by the environmental stimuli. So his classic experiment, the classic experiment that Skinner did that he's famous for, that we need to know in this class that involves learning, is Skinner took a pigeon. And he took this pigeon and he deprived it of food for 24 hours, and so the pigeon didn't eat. The bird was hungry. So then he put the bird in this, this box, okay? It was kind of like a cage, except it was a box. And he put 3 buttons on there, okay? He put 3 buttons. And the 3 buttons didn't have anything like, it wasn't one was red and one was yellow and one was green. He put 3 white buttons. And when the bird sat in the cage trying to figure out what to do. Now remember what Skinner's saying. Skinner is saying that, okay, remember Watson said that our learning affects our behaviors, and that what in our behavior tells us what associations we've had. Skinner says that's true, but he says that the mental events such as thinking and imaging doesn't cause our behavior, but rather they are examples that are caused by environmental stimuli. So what's the problem with the pigeon? The pigeon is hungry, okay? So the pigeon really doesn't care that there's 3 little buttons there, but the pigeon's hungry. And the pigeon is in this glass box, okay? It's got air and it can breathe and everything. But the pigeon has nothing but 3 buttons in there. So the pigeon is hungry, but the pigeon has never seen 3 buttons before. So the pigeon starts out and he pecks at the first button and nothing happens. He pecks at the second button and food comes out and the pigeon says, "Wow, I need food." He hasn't had food for 24 hours. He starts eating the food. So the pigeon goes and he pecks at the third button and no food comes out. So then the pigeon just goes after the second button and hits it, and the food comes out and the pigeon is full, and then the pigeon doesn't want to peck at the buttons anymore. So then Skinner goes another step further. So once again, now this poor pigeon's probably going fat, skinny, okay? So now this pigeon has been deprived of food again, it's really hungry. So he puts it in the same box, but this time the buttons are different colors. Even though animals are colorblind, the pigeon can tell the different shades of the color. So once again, this time he used red, okay, and he used green, and he used blue. And so the middle button that gave the pigeon the food the first time, the pigeon came in and pecked at the middle button, okay, and no food came out. Then the pigeon began to peck at the first button back again and no food came out. But the third one that was blue, okay, the pigeon pecked at it and the food came out. Oh, so it just began to peck at that button and got as much food as it could eat. So you can see where the third experiment's going. So now Skinner put this bird in the same deal, 3 buttons, okay, and he continually moved the blue button around. So the first one was blue and out came the food. The pigeon pecked right away at the blue button. Food came out and it ate and didn't even mess with the other buttons. Then he moved the button to the second one and he moved it back and forth until pretty soon the bird could recognize blue as the color. So what's happening here? So once again, Watson says that our behavioralism is a result of our learning. And Skinner agreed with that. He said, but it's the environmental stimuli to meet our basic needs that cause our behaviors. So what happened was he had this pigeon that did what? Recognized blue. So some people would say, well, the pigeon knew that blue was food. Well, eventually he did, but what Skinner is saying is that because of his environmental stimuli, he was able to learn that blue was the food. So we're going to stop right there. We're going to come back in with classical conditioning in the next video. But I want you to know in this video, learning, we defined that. We had the 3 parts of learning, the 3 areas of performance, appreciation, understanding. We talked about Watson, we talked about Skinner, and I'll see you at the next video.